Welcome back to the Veritas Project. We're going to switch gears a bit here. Last time we spoke with a Christian who converted to atheism. This time we will speak with someone who converted to Christianity. So first off, thank you, Christie, for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem.
So I guess to start off, just kind of share a little bit about yourself and your personal history and your testimony, if you will.
Well, I was raised, well, actually, I should start at the very beginning. I was actually baptized in a Roman Catholic church when I was a baby. And then I guess when I was around 6 years old, my mother switched us to an Episcopalian church because she didn't agree with a lot of the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church. She didn't really agree with believing in a pope and several other things I can't fully remember at this time. But so she switched us to the Episcopalian Church, which is still extremely similar to Roman Catholic in a lot of its practices and in the service and the communion and the prayers, but there are some differences. There is no pope. The priest can actually get married. Like I had a priest growing up who was actually divorced and remarried in the Episcopalian Church. Over the years, based on one thing or another, I had some crises of faith, some attacks of faith, and many years would go by and I wouldn't go to church. I would go like the main holidays, the Christmas and Easter people that go, the diehard, even the ones who don't never go and will go on Christmas and Easter kind of thing. And then about in 2013, a friend of mine texted me on Easter because she knew that was a difficult holiday for me and invited me to go to her church, which is called Valley Christian Church in Hopewell Junction, New York. And she said they're starting a new message series, and she thought I would really like to go. And I hadn't been to church in like probably over 10 years. Probably the last time I'd been in church was for my mother's funeral. But for the last time to actually be in church for like a normal day, I couldn't even remember at that point. So before I could say no, I said yes. I would go. Yeah, it was really, I was like, I knew I was going to say no, so I said yes before I could change my mind. And then I was like, okay, remind me, because, it was like going to be 2 or 3 weeks in the future at that point. It wasn't like 2 days away. And I remember that Saturday thinking, oh, I hope she forgets. I don't want to go. I hope she forgets. And then she didn't forget. So it was like in April, because it was a couple weeks after Easter of 2013. And I went, and I thought it was really great. And it was, they were doing a message series based on the book that Rick Warren had written, What on Earth Am I Here For? And I was like, okay, this is cool. I might come back. And then a couple weeks went by, and I didn't go back. And then I went back again. It's like, all right, let me try it again. And I don't know, just something inside of me just turned. I don't know what happened. I had never expected it, never planned on it. Just sitting there, I just felt like I belonged somewhere again for like the first time in years. And I joined, they call them community groups. It's similar to like a Bible study group, right, where there's, they have single groups and then married groups. And I joined a singles group of women. And I got involved with that, and then I got involved with serving, and it just kind of spiraled into just now I never miss a Sunday unless I'm like sick or out of town. And it's honestly, in my view, one of the best decisions I've ever made. I mean, like I was mentioned to you before we went on air, I listened to, your podcast, and I kind of look at myself as the opposite, where, you and your friend were like, all growing up and everything into it, and then you kind of came away from it, where I was kind of the opposite. I was like years of not being into it, and then I came back to it.
Right. When I joined when I was younger and a teenager, I don't regret joining the church when I did, because I was going through a really hard time dealing with, depression and rejection and everything.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I would be here if it wasn't for specifically my youth group.
Right.
So I do feel like I've said before, my problem isn't with God or religion or anything like that. It's more about the church. But honestly, when I joined this youth group when I was a teenager, it saved my life.
Yeah.
It was a very positive thing in my life.
Absolutely. I mean, I hear stories like that in my church. there's been a couple of messages where there have been like my pastor, and you can, I mean, for anyone who wants to, I can give the website out at the end and you can watch them online for yourself. It's not just me saying them. Has shared very personal things of his life, of how, things of the faith have saved his life. We had what was called a girlfriends conference this past weekend, and somebody else was sharing about how, she almost ended her life when she was a teenager, and the church saved her life. So absolutely, yeah. I mean, I don't feel like I was at that point, but I feel like I was so anxiety ridden, so depressed, so just not in a good place at all in my life that it really turned my life around in a lot of ways. I mean, I wasn't like going to kill myself or anything like that, but I was not in a good spot a few years ago.
Was there a specific event that happened that really made you believe that God was real?
Well, I always kind of believed in God. I'd have attacks of faith a lot over the years, but I could never fully not believe in God. I never could get myself to like never believe. When I was around 19, I think it was, and I had my first attack of faith, because I realized my own mortality. The world doesn't revolve around me, and I'm not going to live forever, kind of thing. And I got so scared. I just remember being like terrified, and I was just like I couldn't sleep, and I just started praying. And I mean, I know that it's gonna sound hokey and everything like that, but I just remember closing my eyes and just feeling like, because this had been days, like days of fear, days of anxiety, days of trying to figure out what the meaning of life was. And it was like the middle of the night, and I was like crying, and I was so upset. And I just remember praying, and like my eyes were closed. It was dark in my room, and I saw a light, and I got calm, and I was like, all right, I don't understand it. I don't know what's going on, but I became calm. And so, yeah, I don't have any proof. I didn't hear a voice. I didn't, nothing like that. I'm not gonna, but and and that's what's kind of happened to me over the years. Like, whenever I have that attack, I'll pray and I'll feel better. So to me, that's all the proof I need is if I'm praying to a God and I feel better afterwards, something's right, you know.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't have any proof that God exists, but I know that day what happened.
So can you kind of describe what your church is about, whether if there's a specific denomination and how you compare it to other churches that you hear about?
Well, it's a Christian church. It's not really a denomination. I think it's probably a closest thing I could maybe describe it to would be Protestant. They believe, as I do, that Jesus Christ is our Savior. So they go by the teachings of Jesus. That's not, I don't believe, what you would call a fundamentalist. But it's very strong belief in the Bible, very strong belief in the Word of God, and very strong belief of following Jesus, um, and living your life that way to glorify God. Um, but it is Christian. It's not Catholic. It's not Episcopal. It's not Protestant. It is just considered a Christian church. So I guess it'd be non-denominational.
Are there any denominations or traditional Christian beliefs that you don't necessarily agree with?
I mean, I have struggled with, the gay homosexuality, gay marriage, it being a sin. I've always struggled with that. That has probably been one of my biggest struggles growing up. I used to have arguments with my mother about it because she was a very strong Christian, and she totally believed in following the Bible, no matter what. And I'd be like, but no, but no, it's not okay. How can you say that? And I still struggle with that. I'm not gonna lie. I still struggle with that. That's probably the biggest one I still struggle with is when they say that's a sin in the Bible. I don't have the answer to that. I try to just pray on it because I don't judge people, and I don't believe it's a sin. And if it's a sin to not believe it's a sin, then I'm sinning. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Why do
because
you think
I do struggle with that.
why do you think some things are glossed over as opposed to other things written in the Bible? It talks about slavery, wearing wool, stoning children, but people are so fixated on things like homosexuality. So
But
like
so why will Christians forget that those things happen, but like
right, but
focus so
they're
slowly?
still fixated on
I don't know.
other things. Some
Because,
things are okay now, but other things are not.
right. And life hasn't really changed that much from a long time ago. I mean, technology can gloss over things, but so many of the horrible things that happened back in Roman times are still happening. Just rape, murder, slavery. I mean, I
Hmm.
just, like I said, went to this conference this weekend on human trafficking and on slavery. So, why there's such a focus on two people that are in love with each other versus other things that are just worse. I don't know, and I don't have the answer to that question. But that's human beings. That's not God. God is not calling down on us saying to us to persecute gay people. That's human beings not understanding the way that people are, the way that they're born, and the way that they are living their lives. And to me, that's not God is not telling me to hate gay people. God is telling me to love all people.
Hmm.
So the people that choose to hate gay people are doing that's a human choice. That's not a spiritual choice. Regardless of what's written in the Bible, I don't believe God would ever want us to judge our fellow neighbor like that or to hurt them like that.
Right.
I know that might sound contradictory to what's written in the Bible, but my belief is different than that. I think the purpose of serving God is to glorify him, to glorify our lives on this earth because I believe we are here because of him. And serving him is probably really difficult it's difficult for me sometimes. I mean, I serve at my church, but it's not that hard to go and help out, to volunteer. I mean, you can volunteer for the Red Cross. You're not volunteering at your church, but you're still volunteering your time. So volunteering my time isn't that hard, but living my life, serving him in the way I live my life would probably be a little harder because it's always want to do it my way. I don't want to do it God's way. I want to do it my way. So that's probably the harder part of serving God and having that purpose is submitting to not doing it your own way, but doing it His way and trying to live a life like that. I don't always succeed at that. I sin every day. Um, but I think that's where people get caught up is they want it's this world is such an instant gratification. Give it to me now, give it to me on my terms, and give it to me my way, and that doesn't get us anywhere. I mean, not in my opinion anyway. So to me, I don't know if this is making sense, but to me, serving God is doing it His way, not your way. And
Uh,
I'll be the first to admit I don't always do that. Like I'm not, I'm not living a perfect life.
Me neither.
No.
One of my biggest things that I had to come to terms with around the time when I left the church was that I had been seeking God and serving the church for about a decade of my life. And I
Mhm.
had to look back and, people in the church talk about, oh, it's about a personal relationship with God or Jesus. And I have this personal relationship with him. And I had to be honest with myself and say, I really don't have a personal relationship. I say I
Mhm.
do, I believe I do, but I really don't.
Mhm.
So, could you maybe touch on that? Like, if you, you have a you'd say you have a personal relationship with God, right?
I do, yeah, but it's not. Go ahead, finish what you're gonna say.
I mean, could you kind of specifically explain that personal relationship? Like, how can you tell the difference between the voice of God from a voice in your
Okay,
head?
all right. Well, I mean, to me, it's when we like say I'm doing something that I know I shouldn't be doing. If I'm justifying something in my head, or even if it's just not a sin, but I just know it's wrong. If I'm justifying something in my head, or I'm making an excuse in my head of why I can continue doing something I know full well I shouldn't be doing, that's me. That's
Mm-hmm.
my voice in my head. Um, but if I'm saying like there is, I don't want to go into the exact sin, really don't. But there was a thing where just recently, everywhere I turned around, I saw some sign of what I was doing wrong. And that's God. The voice in my head telling me, oh, come on, you can do this anyway. It's really not that big a deal. That's me. But the thing on the internet that I'm seeing, and the thing on the TV that I'm seeing, and the thing in the newspaper I'm seeing, telling me that it is wrong, to me, those are signs from God. Because if I'm justifying it in my own head, that's not God. That's not God's voice. But just really quick after that, God tells us what we need to know when we need to know it, in my opinion. And human beings are very quick to justify their own actions. So that's what I meant. Like, if you're justifying your own actions, you're more than likely it's your own voice you're hearing.
Hmm. What would you suggest to people? Well, we talked in the last podcast that there are over 30,000 Christian denominations, all claiming to be the true Christians. What would you suggest to people is the correct one to follow?
Well, I mean, you said just a second ago a Christian denomination, so I don't know if there's any wrong Christian denomination to follow, and I don't believe there's any real. I mean, I know my faith will say, you have to follow Jesus Christ, but there are faiths, like there's a Jewish faith, there's Islam, there's Buddhism. I'm not going to sit here and say somebody else's beliefs are wrong. So for that, I will also stray there, I guess, from what the Bible tells us. But in terms of 30,000 Christian denominations, if you're a Christian, to me, you're a Christian. If you believe in God and in Jesus Christ, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong if you practice a different denomination than I do. To me, as long as you follow Jesus Christ and accept him as your savior, I don't believe there is a right or wrong denomination. I do believe some people take their faith and twist it and make it more harmful to people than it needs to be. And those, I would say, are probably not the best ones to follow. I think if you find a church that you're happy with, that's all that's important.
Yeah.
Because I know there are churches that are corrupt. There are churches that harm people, that are only after your money. And no, those, of course, but if you can find a church that you're happy with and that, you feel like in your heart is the right place for you to be, then I would never sit here and tell you you're in the wrong denomination.
Right. I had my old youth pastor from when I was a teenager. He started his own church a few years ago, and this was even after I left the church and kind of deconverted.
Mm-hmm.
But he's one of the few people from that church that I still respect, that actually lives what he preaches.
Right.
And even after I wasn't sure if I believed in God or not at that point, and I left the church, I still attended his church when he first started, just to support them, because I really felt that he was one of the few people I've seen in my life that really tried to live the example of Jesus.
Mm-hmm. And are you still in contact with him?
Yeah. He's actually going to do an interview here soon.
Oh, great.
But yeah, so many people say one thing, but they live another.
Oh, okay. No, and you're right. They do. You're absolutely right. And that's what I don't agree with. I mean, like I said, I'm not perfect. I'm not going to sit here and say I never sin and that I live a perfect life. I mean, as a former Christian yourself, that only one person lived a perfect life, and it's not us. So,
yeah, he's
yeah,
he's definitely not perfect, but he tries to be. Really tries to.
Right.
He tries to help people.
So I would say the same with my pastor. Maybe my pastor would be the first person to tell you he's not perfect, but he is the most amazing. I mean, it is insanely incredible how much faith this man has, and just how he gets it across to people in this church. And I mean, he's been the pastor of this church for 25 years, and that's a long time
Mm-hmm.
to be a pastor of a church. So, I mean, I read in my paper here about churches closing, and we just opened a second campus where like 2 churches in one location now are in a movie theater in Poughkeepsie, New York, because there was just too many people. They couldn't fit them all in.
A movie theater?
Yeah, actually Regal Cinemas across the country apparently are doing that. They're renting out their space to churches. So, I mean, apparently my church had looked for a building to rent or buy, but it was cheaper for them to rent out the movie theater for the entire year than it would have been to rent a building and have it sit empty because they still have their main site. And if they rented a building in Poughkeepsie, it would have sat empty 6 days out of the week. So, but I guess Regal is doing that across the country. Regal Cinemas, yeah. It's really kind of. I didn't think I was going to like it at first, but it's really kind of cool. Because I only live, I mean, before I was driving about 20, 25 minutes to go, and now it's 5. So I can't beat that. 5 minutes to get to church.
And then you can watch a movie after church.
Mm. Seriously, and they were giving, and they're still giving away. They were at the very beginning, and they're still doing it. They're giving away free movie tickets to anyone who wants to come for the first time. They were.
Wow.
They gave out a ton of movie tickets the first weekend in January. The one thing I like about Valley is that they don't ever ask you to do something that they're not willing to do themselves. Because even when they were running a message series in the fall to try to, because they're launching a new campus, they need the extra money, of course. So, and you could just tell how painful it was for them to do it, and they weren't gonna run it, but they offered the money themselves. Like the lead pastors tithed more money, and so they weren't gonna say, okay, we need you guys to tithe more money if they weren't gonna tithe more money.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So they're willing to put it out of their pockets just to ask us to put it out of ours. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
they weren't going to say, okay, you need to give us more, and then not give more themselves. So that to me just shows state of mind. It shows intent, and that shows real faith um, that they're not just there for the money. They're not just there to line their pockets. Like I said, they don't ask you to do something they don't do themselves. And any church worth its, integrity opens its books. I mean, it's a nonprofit organization. You should be able to go in and see where that money goes.
Hmm.
So anyone that is worried about their church doing that, I urge them to look into it, see where that money's going, and if you feel it's going somewhere where it shouldn't be going, then maybe that's not the church you should belong to.
Why does it seem so hard for people to? Why do you think it seems so hard for people to believe in God? If God cares for us as much as He claims to, why does He rely on signs and faith for us to feel His love?
Well, that was why it was always so hard for me to believe in God when I was younger, or and not to believe, because, like I said, I was never able to fully not believe. There's something stopped me from just never from stopping my beliefs, but it's because you can't see it. It's not tangible. People want something concrete. They want God to just say, "Hi, I'm here." Um, I remember, actually, it was when I was in an Episcopalian church listening to the sermon, and it was one of the actual sermons when I was a kid. I remember listening to. And he was telling the old joke about a guy who was like falling off of a mountain or whatever and was holding on for dear life and prayed to God to help him. And God answered him and said, he said, "Is anybody out there?" And God said, "I'm here." And he's like, "God, what do I do? What do I do?" And he's like, "I want you to trust me." He's like, "Okay, I'll trust you." And he's like, "I want you to let go." And he's like, "What do you mean? You want me to let go of the mountain? I'll fall and I'll die." And he's like, "No." God's like, "Trust me. I want you to let go." And the man said, "Is anyone else out there?" He couldn't trust God because he couldn't like foresee why God would, you know what I mean? So
Hmm.
it's because people can't see it, they can't touch it. But if you listen to what God has told you to do in the Bible, and if you see the signs around you, all you have to do is open your eyes and they're there. I think the people that don't see the signs, they just are too afraid to look for them. Should you have to look for signs? Maybe you shouldn't, but it's just, to me, they're really not that hard to see. I didn't see them when I wasn't looking for them, but now that I'm looking for them, I see them all over. Like, so they're really not that hard. Some are harder than others. Some you have to, figure out, but to me, they're really not that hard to find if you're looking for them and if your eyes and your ears are open. But I think the biggest reason that they're so hard for people is because it does take faith. You have to believe. You have to, say, okay, I'm going to trust something that I can't see. And that's really hard. That was the hardest part for me. It's still the hardest part for me. I'm not going to say I never sit here and be like, come on, just give me something. But I think that's the hardest part is because you can't see it.
Why do you think we have to rely on that to communicate with God?
I don't know. Maybe because of the whole faith thing. He's saying, trust me. And in order to rely on that, you have to trust him, and you don't trust yourself, and you're not trusting society or what you can see. I mean, I'm not really sure, but I think he says it in the Bible, trust me. And you either trust him or you don't. I mean, it's all written there. I mean, some of it's metaphorical, some of it's true, some of it isn't true. Some of it can be proven wrong. Some of it probably can't be, but It's all written there if you choose to believe it. And if I'm wrong, one day when I die and I'm wrong and the joke's on me, then okay, whatever. But what if I'm right?
Do you believe the Bible is infallible?
Infallible means, forgive me, I'm like, I know what that word means, but
Do you believe the Bible is perfect and true, or do you think that it's possible that there are parts of the Bible that are wrong?
I think that's more of a possibility than the Bible being wrong. I don't think the Bible is. I don't believe in the. I believe there's a lot of metaphors in the Bible. Um, there's so much scientific evidence of evolution and things like that. It does war with the spiritual side of the Bible, but I do believe in general the Bible is real and should be taken as such. But I don't think everything in there is, I think some of it's gotten a little twisted over the years, maybe mistranslated. And I know that probably makes me sound, like I said, I don't have evidence. I'm not going to sit here and say that I do. I just know what I believe and what it's done for my life. So that's what I'm going by. And if like I said, when that day comes and I'm wrong and there's nothing else out there waiting for me, then I guess the joke's on me. But I don't see any harm in living my life this way. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not hurting anyone, and if my example to people helps them, then I don't see any harm in that either. But I don't have an answer for that. I kind of jumped around a little bit. I really don't have an answer for that question you just asked me. I don't think it made much sense, to be honest with you. So,
How do you typically defend the existence of God and events of the Bible compared to scientific proof or lack thereof?
um, I just think that I remember asking my mother that once too, and she actually, I don't know if this makes sense, and I'm not trying to like prove anything, but I think she said to me, how do we know that God didn't like create evolution? I know that doesn't really make any sense, but I think the way my mother used to explain to me that a lot of things she felt in the Bible were metaphors. So that's why I think that a lot of things in the Bible are metaphors, but that doesn't mean that it's not, some of it's not true. I just don't think you can disprove the existence of God. I don't think you can prove it either. Just like you can't prove the existence of God, I don't think you can totally disprove the existence of God. You can maybe prove evolution, sure, but I don't think you can disprove that there's a higher being out there. Um, if you can, let me know. But I don't. You're never gonna be able to show me something that says God doesn't exist. And like I said, that's where I think faith comes in. It's really easy to not believe. I think it's harder to believe because you're believing in something you can't see and you're believing in something that cannot be absolutely proven. And I think that's why it's so hard, but it's also lasted thousands of years. The Christianity isn't going away. So and I heard the podcast last week or a couple of days ago, and I believe he said that Christians are scared to not believe, but I'm not scared to not believe because I'm not scared to not believe. I don't think nothing's going to happen to me if I stop believing tomorrow. What's going to happen to me? I'm going to die one day whether I believe in God or not. So what's going to happen to me if I stop believing in God tomorrow? So I don't believe in God because I'm afraid. I believe in God because I felt his presence.
Do you believe in an afterlife? Do you believe in the traditional teachings of heaven and hell?
I believe in an afterlife. I don't know if it's the traditional of heaven and hell. I believe there's a heaven. And if I believe there's a heaven, I guess I have to believe there's a hell. Do I believe it's fire and brimstone and, angels playing harps? No, I don't really see that. But I kind of feel like I don't really, I try not to think about it because I don't know what it looks like, but I do believe there's something out there because I kind of feel like regardless of what you believe, if there's nothing else out there, then it's kind of one big cosmic joke we're going through right now in life. That life is just it's just like a bad joke. Yeah. With I'm not saying life isn't great because life is amazingly great, but there's so much strife in life that if there's not something better out there waiting for us, yeah.
Hmm.
So I don't know. That's just the way I've always looked at it. But do I, like I said, fire, brimstone versus angels on harps and stuff like that? No, I don't think it looks like that. But
We kind of talked earlier about, going from Genesis and skipping to the New Testament.
hmm
Um, why does God seem in the New Testament? Why does He promote love and forgiveness, but in the Old Testament it's so morbidly violent?
right. I mean, yeah, I haven't been able to fully read the Old Testament, but I know what's in there. I really need to read more of the Bible. I know. Um, And it's kind of like, that's why he sent Jesus to us in the Bible, is to forgive us. I mean, because we weren't leading perfect lives. And, if God were to be fair, we'd all go to hell based on the lives that we live. But he sent his son to forgive us for our sins, in my opinion. I know a lot of people don't believe that. Um, but, I mean, yeah, you look at Noah, the story of Noah, he killed everyone except for Noah and his family. Um, there's other stories just like that. So, my only guess is that civilization was just so bad that he wasn't always very just and loving, and then he sent Jesus to us, and that's why I follow that Jesus Christ is my savior. Because if you want to say if God is fair or unfair, if God were going to be fair, we'd all go to hell based on all our sins, because we all sin, every one of us.
I don't
Oh, never.
ever.
So, and I know that's not the popular opinion. The popular opinion is, well, it's not true, or this happened. But no, I believe that Jesus Christ is my savior. The one specific thing I can tell you to do is it gave me the strength to get out of the relationship that I was in, that you remember that I was in.
Right.
That was very toxic. That was horrible. I am in a better situation financially. For some reason, I'm not even doing anything really different. I just lived my life, and I went to church, and I started praying, and I met these amazing people, and my life started changing. But it didn't change all at once. It was like little changes, and it was, I got a new job that, but that was like a year later. So how can you contribute that to going to church? But I got out of a toxic relationship. I got a new job. I'm in a, yeah. To me, like the last 2 years have been amazing, and I honestly contributed to telling my friend yes and going to church that day. I don't know if I'd be in this same spot right now if I hadn't done that.
If there was anything you could say to someone that was struggling with their belief, or someone who doesn't have God in their life,
hmm
what would you specifically say to that person to help support and convince them?
I would tell them to pray. I would tell them, first off, the first thing I would tell them to do is pray. And I know it's going to be another unpopular answer, but get down on your knees and pray. And to me, that's not like anything wrong with getting on your knees. Just get down. You don't have to get down on your knees, but just get down on your knees. Just start talking to him. You don't have to have the right words. You don't have to quote scripture to him. Just pray, and then try to find a church that you feel comfortable with, and talk to the people there. I think you'd be surprised at the answers that you find. Well, I will say, like I said, I'm not. I did this before we came on air. I'm not coming at this from an evidence standpoint, and for people who are looking for evidence, you're not going to get that from me. All I can tell you is what my life is like, how it used to be, and what it is now. And like I said, I listened before, and your friend was saying, be a critical thinker. I'm a social worker. Part of being a social worker is being a critical thinker. I have to do that every day in my work. So to me, I don't need evidence to tell me God doesn't exist. I just need to, like I said, I live my life a certain way as an example of for God and to glorify Him. And if that's wrong, then so be it. I'll be wrong.
I think it's great when people um, use when their belief makes them a better person. If they have something to believe in and it makes them a better person and treat other human beings better, I think that's great. It's
Yeah.
uh, it's the churches that use fear and control to manipulate people that I have a problem with.
And I agree with you 100%. And I would tell anyone who wants to know or listen to a message that will just teach you about hope and will just teach you about learning about life and about God to listen to the pod. You don't even have to come to my church. They have their podcasts online, just like you're having yours on YouTube. They have theirs on their website. I'm not here to shamelessly plug them. They're doing a fine job of that on their own. But if anyone is interested, it's Valley Christian Church in Hopewell Junction, New York. Actually, kind of Googled Abraham not existing, and there. I don't think there is any evidence that Abraham existed. But what I don't understand is why people don't think there's no evidence that Jesus existed. I know that the evidence is in the church. I understand that, but I thought there's even if you don't believe he was the son of God, I thought there's pretty much documented evidence that he existed. You might not believe he's the son of God. I get that, but I don't know. Am I wrong?
Well, I think he did exist. Um, just my own personal opinion from what I've looked up. I think he did exist. I'm not entirely sure that he is what has been written about him.
That's why I was just like, I get even if you don't want to believe, because the Jewish faith doesn't believe he was the son of God, and the Muslim faith believes he was a prophet. They don't believe he was the son of God. So, but they all believe he existed. Like the Muslim faith believed Jesus existed. They just believe he was a prophet.
Hmm.
You didn't know that?
I've heard of it, but I don't know extensively what they believe. Like,
Well, I
they
didn't
just
really know that either. I shouldn't say you didn't know that because I shouldn't have said that the way I meant it. It came out, but I just became friends with somebody who's practices Islam, so I asked him. I didn't know that either until recently, but yeah, they believe Jesus was a prophet, but they do believe he existed.
don't.
But they don't believe he was the son of God. They just believe in God as Allah. They don't believe in Jesus as the son of God.
That's
So.
weird to me because I mean, the way I see it, Jesus was either he makes some pretty drastic claims, saying
Mhm.
that he is the Son of God and that he is the only way to the kingdom of heaven. So,
Mhm.
to me, based on his claims in the Bible, he is either exactly who he said he is, or
Mhm.
he is um, the greatest manipulator ever.
Well, that's why they crucified him, according to the Bible.
I don't
you
feel
know.
there's any gray area with Jesus based on the claims he made. He's either
Yeah.
exactly who he said he is, or he is a big liar.
Mhm. Well, yeah. I mean, actually, given whatever evidence you want to look at, if it's just the Bible, it's just the Bible. But yeah, absolutely, you have a point. If you can't believe that he's the Messiah, then yeah, I can see that. But to me, I mean, even if you don't want to believe in the miracles and things like that, you can just believe. I mean, the faith that he preached. I mean, just the peace. He didn't teach anything other than peace. I think they have an easier time believing he was a prophet than they do believing he was the son of God. Because to believe he's the son of God, you have to believe in the virgin birth. And that's just out there. It is. It's out there. I admit it. It's totally out there.
Mhm.
But it's easier to believe he was just a man who was a preacher and a teacher. That's easier to believe for sure than to believe he was the son of God. I've always felt like it's the people who have had the worst, like people that have. I mean, an atheist, somebody, an agnostic doesn't. What's the difference again?
Between atheist and agnostic,
Yeah, I always get them confused.
atheist doesn't believe in any kind of deity, from what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
They don't
Right.
believe in the existence of anything outside of what is proven. Agnostic
Right.
is, to sum it up, unchosen. Like they're undecided. They don't. Maybe God exists. Maybe He doesn't exist. That's what I would label
Right.
myself. I'm not big on labels, but that's what I'd label myself. Maybe God's real. Maybe He's not. Maybe this is real. Maybe
Right.
this is not. I don't know. I don't have the answer.
Okay. So, but yeah, I mean, like, yeah, it's your church that your church was the problem. God was never the problem, in my opinion. It was but like the Westboro Church that you said earlier, and there's other churches like that are judgmental and that fundamental, if you want to call them that, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. Not in my opinion. I don't have proof. I don't have evidence, but my God is not that kind of God. And you got to remember, churches are run by men, and men like power. Men and women. I'm not just judging men, but most churches are still run by men. Um, Human beings like power, and the church is no different. People twist faith into making it seem so judgmental and hypocritical when the true basis of faith is peace and love and like not judging people, loving people as you love yourself. That's one of the commandments: love thy neighbor as thyself, as yourself. Being respectful, things like that. So yeah, it's people who twist it just because of the money and the power. I mean, you got a lot of power preaching over people.
Right.
That's got to be a big power trip for somebody who is corrupt, for
Yeah.
somebody who really doesn't have true faith, you know. I mean, my father was making fun of me for going to church when I first told him I'd gone back to church. I asked him to come to church with me on Christmas Eve when he was in town. He walked out of that church and said, "I will come back here with you one time if I'm back in town again." And this is the same man who had been making fun of me for going back to church and who hadn't stepped foot in a church in probably 10 years. He walked out of that church and said, "I will come back here the next time I'm in town."
I just really want to thank you for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm happy to help. I'm happy to do it, and like I said, I, people are going to believe what they want to believe, and that's fine. I don't have any problems with anyone else's beliefs. But if you're on the fence, you listen to last week, listen to this week, and then make up your mind. Listen to the evidence, and then listen to the person who is not going to go by any evidence, is just going to go by what their life experience has been, and make up your own mind.
Would you be interested in coming on the show again in the future?
Sure.
Even for like an open discussion with other people?
As long as it's respectful, absolutely.
I will set ground rules if that
No,
happens.
I know you would. No, and I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to. I'm really glad we were able to do this, and I'm looking forward to hearing it. Thanks for
Yeah.
asking me.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
All right.
Bye bye.
You too. Bye bye.